one of those cringy introductions where I'm talking to nobody, but
go for it.
I don't know if I'll ever get used to doing that.
I know.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast or YouTube show. Today I'm with a very special guest, Sarah Turner. Hello, Sarah.
Hi.
So this is another one of the ComSciCon Canada based shows. So Sarah, you're coming to ComSciCon Canada.
Yes, I am virtually.
Yeah. Were you originally planning on coming to the in-person one?
Yes. Yeah, I was super pumped to spend a whole week with a bunch of other cool people. But now it'll be a weekend online, which is second best, but better than nothing.
Yeah, I think it'll be all right.
Yeah.
So where are you coming to us from?
I am in Winnipeg. I'm at the University of Manitoba, and I'm in the Department of Community Health Sciences.
Awesome. So actually, the fact that we had a time change, it taught me something new. I had to look up what time zone I was in, like the exact name of it. I usually just say like Toronto time or whatever. And it taught me that the middle letter, so EDT is where I'm at right now. The middle letter signifies daylight savings time or standard time. Didn't know that.
Yes. Yes. So, I'm in Central Standard Time.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's cool.
Time zones.
Good system. So 1 hour apart.
Right.
Not so bad.
Not so bad.
You're in Winnipeg, and what do you study?
So I am doing my PhD in breastfeeding research. So I study breast milk and the composition of breast milk and how it impacts babies' growth and development. So yeah, I love it. It's awesome.
Did you present for Pint of Science?
I didn't, but my advisor, Megan Azad, she did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did
you listen in?
I didn't listen to that one. I listened to a few, but I was tipped off that there was going to be Science of Breast Milk.
Mm-hmm.
And I was intrigued. I never really thought about it as something that is studied, but I mean, of course, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I would say it's probably understudied. So we're doing a lot more work on it now than we ever have in the past. We're finding out things that we never knew about, and there's a lot more to learn. So I think probably at Kind of Science, you may have heard about the microbes in milk. And so that's one component that we've been learning about.
Okay, interesting. And sort of the overarching idea is different components of the breast milk, microbes or nutrient, whatever, that's going to affect the infant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So breast milk and breastfeeding are quite complex. There's a lot going on there. If you want to focus in just very specifically on the composition of the milk, so like what's actually in it, we can think about it like any other food. So it has fats and proteins and carbohydrates, but it also has a ton of other stuff that is really helpful for the baby's growth. So it has different antibodies that are really helpful. There are really important sugar molecules that help feed the bacteria in the baby's gut. And that, if anyone's ever heard of the microbiome, it's kind of an exploding field, and we're learning that breast milk is really, really important for programming the baby's which microbes are growing in the baby's gut microbiome. So that has all kinds of different implications for health and well-being as the baby grows up. The area that I'm focusing on is cognitive development and behavior. So how does breastfeeding and breast milk affect how the baby behaves as they grow up?
Interesting.
So, yeah.
So is this like a clinical sort of work that you do, or?
So I am in epidemiology, so I don't collect any of the data. My job mostly is to analyze the data and ask questions in new ways. But I am working with child study, which is a study that's been happening across Canada for the last I want to say almost 10 years, maybe a bit more. And it is one of the largest pregnancy birth cohorts that is looking at how these really early infant experiences, not just breastfeeding, but other things as well, can affect children as they grow up. And so we're following these kids over time, and we're able to look at a whole bunch of things. And so within that, I'm able to look at how breastfeeding and the composition of milk. So we took samples from moms, and then we're able to follow their kids over time. So we're able to see how that composition from those samples is affecting their development as they get older. So wow. I'm very lucky to piggyback on this study and kind of ask some different questions that I'm interested in.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly hard. I say this whenever I talk to somebody who does these sort of long-term human studies, that it's really, really cool what you guys are able to do. I do not envy you because it seems like an impossible job. I'm a physics guy, so I go to the lab and everything I do is on, plastics and things that are not alive, things that I don't have to track for tens of years.
Yeah.
It's really sort of mind-boggling that you guys are able to do what you do.
Yeah, totally. And we have a huge clinical team, like many people who this is their full-time thing that they dedicate all their time to, is making sure that these kids get followed and that they come in for their visits. They do an amazing job. And one of the large reasons why we're able to do studies like this is because we have these teams of people who are able to keep these parents and kids engaged in the study. Because it's easy for maybe, I did that later, I don't need to follow up anymore, or the parents might not think it's important anymore, but we have really amazing staff who are making sure that these families see the value in it and feel appreciated. So yeah, I would say that the credit goes to our staff, and the researchers get to benefit.
That's a good point, actually, that they can drop out any time. So keeping them engaged is, Yeah, I guess even people in like ecology or biology labs who study like worms or whatever, they don't get to opt out. No, they don't even have to worry about that.
They don't. Or mice, or really any animal study. You do your thing with the animal, and then that's that.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting too. I'm just reminded that I guess there's been conflicting. It's almost like those studies that say like, oh, red wine is good for you, red wine is bad for you. It seems like, if I recall correctly, there's been sort of an oscillation between whether breast milk is best or formula is best. And so it seems to me like this has been like a question for a long time. Would you say that it's just the science that keeps progressing and then you re-ask the question? Is that sort of why you keep getting that?
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up. I think there's a couple of things going on. I think that the science of breast milk is moving along. So now we're doing things that, we haven't done before. We're actually looking at samples of milk, looking at different microbes or different components of the milk, and we're learning more about it, things that we didn't know before. The other component is that breastfeeding is a complicated act because it's not simply a choice for a lot of parents. So someone can say they really would like to breastfeed their baby, and then complications happen, circumstances beyond their control. They're not able to do what they thought they were going to be able to do. And there is a lot of social pressure on moms to be able to parent in certain ways, and breastfeeding has become, it is an important part of child development. That being said, we do have substitutes that are able to sustain babies and help them grow up in healthy ways if mom isn't able to or chooses not to. At the end of the day, the mom, it's her body and she still does get to make that choice. And so I think that part of part of the complication in the messaging is that we do want to say, you know, breastfeeding is the best choice if you're able to do it, and we want to provide more support so that more moms can for as long as they want to, and so that more information is out there and people are informed. But we don't want to push it so far that if it can't happen for whatever reason, moms feel like they've failed in some terrible way. And that's just not true. So I think that the way that we talk about it is really important. And that's part of the reason why I'm so interested in science communication, is because, you know, we could do all of this great science and it's exciting, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't work in practice and if it's making people feel bad about themselves, we need to find a better way to do it. And so, yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be an infinite number of things to be self-conscious about raising a child. This shouldn't have to be one of them. That's a really good point. So actually that leads kind of perfectly into what I was going to ask you next. So you are working on your PhD, but clearly you have a passion for science communication. Can you tell me a little bit about, have you always been interested in communicating science on this level, or was this more of like in response to the area of research you ended up in? I know some people kind of go through university thinking, I would like to, you know, be a science journalist or something like that. Do you see yourself more as like a scientist first, who also needs to really communicate, or the other way around, or a blend of that, or?
Yeah, great question. I would say I started in science being more interested in policy development. So I've always had a real passion for kind of supporting child and youth health. I think that if we're going to do anything to support health, it's like the most meaningful and the best type of investment you can make is to start young, because that's where you're going to get the largest gains. And so I was really interested in kind of maybe doing some government work, or kind of being more of an advocate for really healthy policies. And so that's always been kind of part of my interest. The PhD is I'm definitely interested in science and research. I really love communicating. And as a researcher, you don't always, you get to really choose what you want to engage in, but you don't always get all of those opportunities if you have to be grant writing for 80% of your time. And so I've really gravitated towards exploring more about what career options could look like in science communication after grad school. I would say, I'm not sure what it's going to look like yet. But
just know you want to be communicating something somehow.
Yeah, I want to communicate something. Hopefully I'll figure it out in the next 3 years.
That's interesting. I don't normally talk to people who say science policy was their driving force. But the further I get into the SciComm type stuff, the more it seems like that's a really interesting way to go. I would never have imagined myself being interested in policy. I feel like I would get too frustrated. But
yeah, it is. It's definitely like there are definitely times when, you could work really hard for something and then there's a decision made higher up in government that doesn't align with what you want, and then your work is kind of not moving forward anymore. And so that can absolutely be frustrating. I think that when you're interested in kind of human health and behavior, a good way to kind of actually see change, if it works well, if it aligns with what the current government wants, is to be in policy, because you can, for example, like advocate for implementing some kind of behavior program in a daycare that in 3 years you see these kids are doing way better than they would have otherwise. And so I feel like there's these really tangible outputs where you can see benefit and you can see change. It definitely takes a long time, but I like the bridge between like the implementation of something that could be really meaningful.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Have you done any sort of policy, like volunteer work, or engaged in any sort of things like that?
Yeah, I've done a couple internships at with our government here in Manitoba.
Uh-huh.
And we used to have a group called Healthy Child Manitoba. So it was kind of like an interdisciplinary group that was working together to influence a lot of policy and programs around child health. So from infancy, we had some prenatal programs all the way to school age. So we had a few programs in schools. And that is ongoing. Still, I'm not involved too much in that anymore, but I have had a little taste of it. Yeah, it's something that I still consider.
Okay. I was hoping you were going to say, so I found this one policy advocacy group. I think it's a non-for-profit that I've been sort of investigating called Evidence for Democracy. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I haven't.
Okay. I was hoping you were going to mention them so that I could ask you about them. See if you could vet them for me.
Is it like a think tank?
So I know what they do is they write these briefing documents for policymakers in Ottawa. I think their focus runs the gamut of kind of, I think it's all over the place, health or like environmental, things like this. I think they're currently looking for volunteers to investigate the science training that people in Parliament have. So like profiling them in some way.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the first group that I found when I Googled Canada Science Policy.
Oh, so well, maybe I should write it down and I'll look it up.
Yeah, maybe. I think they're always looking for volunteers. It seems like a pretty rad group of people. So
cool. That's great. Yeah, I feel like Ottawa is Ontario in general, but Ottawa is a hotspot for policy type stuff. There's a lot going on there. Well, obviously because we have the Parliament buildings.
Yeah, being living in Ontario my whole life, I feel like Canada sees it as the center of the world. I think probably everyone else in Canada agrees that that's how we see it.
I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't dispute that.
It's very easy for me to see it that way because I am here, but yeah, it seems like a lot of stuff happens here. Yeah, so interesting to hear from somebody coming from like a completely different realm of science communication. Do you personally have any projects that you work on or projects you're hoping to start up meeting these people at the conference we're going to?
Like a project that would like come out of the conference?
Yeah, I guess the overarching question is there anything you're hoping to get out of the conference like specifically, or are you looking to meet any sort of person in particular that you could collaborate with or something like that?
Oh. Yeah. I haven't, so I don't think I know everyone who's going to the conference, so I don't know what they're what they're all doing. It would be great if there were like profiles of people, which there might be, or I might just meet them at the actual event. The reason I really would love to, what I would really like to get out of the conference is learning from other people's experiences of using different science communication platforms. So even like podcasting, like what we're doing right now, something that I don't have a lot of experience with, but I listen to a ton of podcasts and I listen to a ton of public health podcasts. And I just think like it is a really effective way of getting your message to people who aren't necessarily reading academic journals every day. I also like the idea of like writing books, children's books or magazine articles, different types of like communicating your science in ways that are really appealing to people. I find it such a tragedy to do work and then to have it in a closed access academic journal that not even my mom can read because she doesn't have authorization.
I know, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing more depressing than spending all of your time doing a PhD to have your thesis sit in like the library stacks in the basement.
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, I'm interested in just hearing what other people are doing, and then also being exposed to like maybe there's new ways of talking about things that I haven't heard of before. So
yeah, that seems to be a common thread. So I've talked to a few of us already, and seems like nobody's really going into it with like I need to get this done. I need to meet this person, and we're going to do this thing. It's very much like I just want to see what's out there. I want to meet some people and soak up what they know. It's nice.
Absolutely. I mean, in my university, there's not a course on science communication that I'm aware of. There isn't like a ton of opportunity or knowledge about this topic that is embedded within grad programs. And so I think that it's like such a great, like people do come to it being like, I just want to know kind of where we're at with this and what we can contribute and move it forward and do more of it.
Yeah, I feel like even though like we've had to communicate science since science existed for the most part, it feels like we're pretty like early days in like science communication as a subject unto itself. Like we only have one grad program in it in Canada. Most universities seem like they don't really offer any like real course. It's mostly like on if you can find a conference, go for it basis. It would be really nice to see that be incorporated in like a grad school curriculum, in my opinion.
Totally. Yeah.
So basically this conference, but everybody gets to go to it every year if they want. I don't know. Expand the program. That's what I'm saying.
Totally. Big dreams, visions. It's good.
Yeah. So another part of this conference is the write-a-thon, and we have a deadline looming. Have you started?
Yeah, I did it.
Good.
I did it. Yes. I think on Monday. Like
nice. So what was your approach? Do you mind spoiling what you chose to write about?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I've wrote a few op-eds, so kind of like opinion pieces for magazines and online, newspapers or online newspapers. And so I took that approach because that's what I'm most familiar with. And I wrote kind of a piece about mostly about what I talked about today, about how breastfeeding and breast milk is like a really fascinating subject and we could know a ton about it. But if we don't support moms to be able to do this, like we're not going to get anywhere with it. It's definitely, the policy is really important around that. And even just like the public opinion and support. And so I talked about that in my piece, made an argument for why we should support breastfeeding.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I find that kind of stuff, we're not trained to write like that. So clearly you've had some practice, you've written for some places before. How did you get started doing that? Did you just decide one day, I'd really like to be able to be good at writing stories for like newspapers and stuff, and I'm just going to go for it? Or is there...
Basically, yeah. So there's a platform at our university that does offer op-ed workshops. And so they're called the Center for Healthcare Innovation, and they do a lot with science communication, work with researchers. And so I did a half-hour or a half-day op-ed workshop where one of the instructors there taught us like how to start it, what a pitch looks like, what a hook is. So you want to make it relevant, and then how to kind of structure your paragraphs to make like a clean argument and then have your conclusion at the end. And so I've done a bit of reading about like how to do that. There are other documents available on the internet that kind of give an outline and a structure for it. And then, literally you just try it and get people to edit it and then rework it more and submit it. And hopefully someone likes it and then someone, try again. But I would say I've always liked doing that kind of thing. So it's been something that somewhat comes easily to me because I enjoy it. So it hasn't been too much of a struggle to get my head around that way of writing. But
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's
fair.
different. It's different than writing a paper, that's for sure.
Have you found any like transferable skills at all? Like as you practice more writing for general public, that you become better at writing a science paper, or is it hard to
Yeah.
transition? Or
So my opinion is that we generally make our science papers too boring and complicated. So I think that a lot of the skills that can be learned from communicating to more general audiences can be transferred into writing academic papers. Just even like clarity of like making your paper tell a story is not something we generally talk about when we're going to be writing a manuscript, in a way that like it reads nicely and it like captures you and like brings you in, and like not everyone thinks that's important, and that's fine, but I love reading a paper that I feel like I can easily kind of get my head around, and it's clear and it makes sense and it flows. So yeah, I would say that those skills are transferable, to some extent. Hopefully it makes me a better writer.
yeah, I feel like it's not fine. I feel I feel like if I have to fight to understand the article, then I shouldn't have to read it.
Yeah, then you maybe just won't read that one.
Yeah,
Then it
there
won't be cited.
there better not be like really good science hidden in those, because I'm not
Mm,
reading them.
yeah, fair. Yeah, I know. And you like if you read papers in like some of these really high impact journals like Nature or Cell Host, they don't like they're clear. You know, like
Hmm.
what the authors have spent a lot of time kind of making a really nice story out of their data and their results. And so you can kind of see like, okay, so if I want to get my paper published in a high impact journal, working on making like this really clear writing style a priority is actually like, that's very important.
Yeah. Maybe if journals had like paid editors and reviewers, we would get more clear papers coming out the other end.
Totally. Yes, I absolutely agree. It's an interesting system.
Yeah, yeah. It would be a deep dive to go into it now, so maybe we'll back
Take
off on that one a little bit.
fair.
Awesome. Well, so we have about a month until the conference comes up. So until then, I guess we're just editing each other's work, and that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Anything that you would like to touch on that I haven't asked you about yet, or anybody you'd like to shout out or point us in the direction of?
Wow. Yeah. Well, I definitely should shout out to my supervisor. Amazing person, Megan. So like Megan is at, if I, you know, she's my advisor, and she's very supportive of me doing all these kinds of different things that aren't necessarily, you know, exactly my research, you know, at the very moment. And so I am so thankful to have support to really expand, my knowledge base beyond what my PhD proposal specifically says. Find that opportunity really, really special. So yeah, huge shout out to her. And I think also, maybe I'll just touch on this because I think it's important that I really do, from the research that I've done and some of the, I've been in this world for over 5 years now, but disclaimer, I'm not a mom, so I actually have not breastfed myself. And so I don't personally have experiences, but I have seen that breastfeeding is also really an issue of social inequity. And so there's lots of barriers that moms face that prevent them from being able to parent or be able to care for their babies in the way that they want to. And so I think it's important to kind of like remember that lens as well when we're doing research that touches on some of these more sensitive, human topics, is that the science is important, but we can never divorce the science from like the humanity of it. And so, yeah, I think learning to marry those two things is a process, something that takes a lot of time and experience, and you can't really read a textbook about that. You really just have to kind of yeah, dig in, talk to people, and try to be humble about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good sentiment, and that's a nice thing to sort of leave off on.
Yeah, good.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I can't wait to. I assume we're all going to read each other's things at some point.
I hope so. Well, what did you write about, Adam? Have you not done it yet?
I have not done it yet. I've been busy writing other stuff for. I've been helping design first-year labs to be done at home because of all this COVID stuff. So I've been writing about that. Maybe I'll just write about that. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's fresh.
Your experience with making a physics lab in a home. That's a huge thing. Yeah.
I actually have one of the kits we mailed out right next. I'm using it as a microphone stand. We mailed out a little box with a springy keychain for measuring forces, protractor, a rubber ball. Yeah, I don't know. It was a fun little kit. So I don't know. Maybe I'll do that.
Sounds good. Maybe you should write a children's book about it.
I would love to. That actually sounds like the dream.
Yeah, I know that there have been some like sketch outlines of books in the Dropbox or in the Google Drive. So
I should
something like that. Yeah,
I should dig in there and not necessarily steal an idea, but become inspired.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for letting me take some of your Friday. Mm-hmm. Are you going to have a proper academia weekend, which means working through the weekend, or are you going to have a proper human being weekend?
This weekend, I will do a bit of work. I generally try to be quite strict. I absolutely take one day off, and most weekends I take both days off. But
good.
Yeah, I think that's super important. I like, sustainability, mental health, wellness. We gotta make those priorities. So,
yeah, we're in it for the long haul. We can't afford to burn out doing 6-day weekends. Yeah. Do 4-day weeks. Cut back to 3, maybe.
I would love to work 30 hours a week. I feel like that would be ideal.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm efficient past 30. I think there's like a lot of durdling around and I don't know, just distracting other people in my lab. I feel like I should be limited to 30 hours in the lab and I'm not allowed to come back in. Yeah. Well, all right. Well,
this was fun.
Yeah, I'll let you go. Thanks again. And of course, I'll let you know when all of this is up. And
great.
Yeah. Have a great weekend.
Okay. You too. Talk to you later.
Bye.